introduce Matthew Judge, who is the digital media coordinator from Blue Ventures. Matthew, you're unmuted, so do you want to give an overview of what's going on?
Sure thing. Firstly, hello everyone. This is my first Anglo-Malagasy meeting. I'm also able to join you because it's virtual, although I'm slightly closer than some of us are. I'm based in Bristol in the UK, and I work for Blue Ventures. And this film that some of you may have seen, but I'm hoping for the majority of you this will be new, has been 4 years of work for a number of us in our organisation, struggling to try and tell a particular story in this fashion, which is the first time we've done a film like this. It's been very well received. It has won a number of awards recently, and it's a short film about a Vezo fisherwoman called Madame Kokoly, and it's sort of a fly on the wall look at her life and her reflections of, let's say, a changing marine environment. And for us as a conservation organisation, this has been probably the single best communications piece we've managed to produce that really shows off what a changing environment can mean for someone like Kokoly. So I'll shut up, and then if you've got any questions or comments, then I'll be available at the end to answer them.
Kidara lavadeta chimis darai. Tadua ni marufia. Kadi tadua vang haranan kisachivang jaraya abechimitam. Ni ana chendigilasti. Kata kuchinai pari kuchivita. Itu vonya na churita. Tang tadu ratui. Tami tinihina ko nila ako. Ni siya ratui ka ba kumitay. Lavanangan nanti nalaay na paay. Kasi lahat si mi uva fat. La mi siya siyo arena disco lawit. Tang mi siya hiyo tang pamarakiri tang menudo. Kasi nga pangasya na kureo. Rusi na mga chimistang rusi ka faragi sa tempo kami sa lumba malakratui peta ka to auro sa no tia dalam tu sa pamarak bari hangga im chang sio tera mutina na chang pa tadu tang game kia ade vature nganda munga avat tempo que derrar bichefas nem para toda me ha que são beto hara não querer tenha la mangala manakaniwa mi tudo caro coi harai tudo catia coi harai tanani que hatchimis ade vatu tempo que hatina nak tihara vat manu ni hara ngapus ni maru te kumare hurita sia farafara kiti tanga bora e kiti sia hem kurela para imitar que eu tinha na ca de cotenga mala manaka ni tenga Au, taveta, tanjai. Burita mi mga ano sana at mande da siskeri te meranda pamunta vau. Dapat cuma da kakirano ho mi burita mande laga ko mangiri. Sima warare. Tinanak sinumada yun, dama kasi sa ulo. Sa pumaray, fang, tsatsaran tinga urita.
Deklo.
At tsanga.
Chi andava a facciare?
E non è tenuto, tengo tu Vezo, so mangia per ruari e facciare fu.
Hey, mangiri pa sa Hasmaru.
Ya mangini pa sa Hasmaru.
Buti mai fu kayo. Papa kuno sasa. Rasa ere mia sa tiago. Teka tayo pulay, jampe na mga pulay. Kami sa nata kami sa urus, mga pulay ko sa hay. Ewo, mga sa laka rin. Rasa ere mga sa tiago. Hay just tiput. Baba ko man nakanisaw. Baba ko may mga sa daka, dati may mga sa laka sa mga rus ka ewo. Mianat sa hay. Nanti miana cuma sa rus sitat tiya santu semi sana pon tu cuma sa bakaw ko. Ani titi baba raham sa uinte. Setan misi baba ai eu mante havo. Dada miara kami was fiamaro. Nak dama ngiri ke mga bure se sia sampai karada fiancifa lovo. Eta dua tim sira nani mande so vo fiti tenga mande man su tiap tenga de nani kiu
Tsy sahira fa satria ma johary igny mba magnampy azy ka mba afaka mijano an-tanà koa za ampela igny. Fa kokoa le tsy mijano fa satria iro lahilahy i hamelom-po. Tsy misy repos io. Toujours la ran'olo lemy izay vo mijano. Lemy koa rano manjamby laka koa i maminta. Izao tsy misy repos zao. Nao iagnena marare.
Sa maminta vo fiti mahas misi landai ke durai herfara ni manda seri ke durai. Dada miara kami mas fiamaro. Suruh buareng ko rami suruh bambani da kau rumai bambana. Pampalahir fa sa fiti mista tu hakiu ne fadeta. Ran tini maru sa cita ondarai. Mandeha marai, mandeha hariva. Miranga pag pudin dai ko. So ang maru dai pudin inteiro andar niya.
Ia luha laatsa mare. Laatsa mare, mahatsa mare. Aleu ne nara yabi kila raha yabi hai amizai ameluma itiana. Mga pahikua i. Ahiru mahazo ka mea kua ho zaurene i. Kanga mo tsy mahavelom-po ka. Pahikua ro tavanjako amelogna. Amelogna ireo i mbo mamelogna zaurene i koa.
Vita, mana masarai kiro zero lak. Vita ko ra kiro ko manteha ko ngat daham chitu fanju. pirura miti siya mendengahara sa miasa mantea kau. Asa raiki kan nengaku midas. Mantea kau.
Iro manao asa maro samby karaza asanjeka etoy ata iabiaby lafa kila atao hoe asanjeka etoy ata iabiaby tsy raha misy tsy atay lafa atao asanjeka etoy 100% fa izy ty raha anjeka igny amy iaby tia Vezo ay feno hoe ty raha hanany moa hoe ro fa tsy hita horita io zay ro mpiraha azy fa laha manahaky ty taloha ambony maro ty horita aha tsy raha mitovy tsy raha misy olo mitovy aminy ty fahitako horita ty fahita ty horita mbanjiaka egny fa io mahatsatsy voaloha e fahitako horita
Kultumu timbu Cina hefa seka. Dapat bakau misai. Na itanam kurega. Nampula bisai. Supaya hefa mahal sujada rujuk. Zerate até a vida tem a verdade. Eu sei já fui vídeo fundo sei essa chão. Tava punando essa vinha, livre. Greg dita que dá Chimeng ureng miseu. Sia sua hanan jan dam. Como murisa ka fana taite. So bitay sa rumba he tao. Nafati sa tenga mi jar chimis.
Kokoly mahavita raha. Tsy misy magnaraka ny kokoly. Olo aby la tserikazy kokoly raha mahavita. Io mandeha laka raiky avao misy tsy matahotsy. Njalaka kelikeliky. Njalaka igny romite misy rano. Io andesy avao. Tsy matahotsy io. Rano fasoro. Fasuru rano olo tsaka ha kokoly zay manao akory senene homby bakao avao izy tsy rano soro mila horita avao tsy menaky ty taloha ty horita tsy matetiky misy ty horita ma antsasa vitsivitsika avao ty fovay misy io ako malahelo le tegna tseriky hoe raha ty le manao akory manahaky toy tseriky tegna Se la helu le tenga mandeha anjara igny tsy mahita. Tegna tsy malahelo lava. Kanefa ty azo taloha maty moa tsy afaka ambetsevetsy fa ary ata tsy atao agneritseritsy avao. Fa velomam-poro atao agneritseritsy.
Ura io atua ura o vitako fatano misy ahi rato mare. Sakafo ko ho ampy horita io. Ndadala ka fe tsy ampy. Fe mitunda vo bakandano ng ko voado. Basta ko mare ko fir kero de jafuri tenga buihina. Zay vulang ko mihasa betik sa ten to pip kira lam chambu. Tinira itam vulang ko de ni hasa ni betik ranu maray sur manakanan ke nata bakit rate nangang bako nanchok pakaru asai dapat laki narin kini hanga amilak hanga tera teng na ni chambu lang at dakau zay Hana kuri awo wasu ayo mana ki. Hana ni kia. Nisi desa. Si maru hana ni fasafe de takfia. Anga mariti vidi. Kira-kira kia vau hitambeng. Minte viab. Te la ciri jaha. Kidara dafatetak simis darai.
So, wow, what a great film. I'd like now to invite Matthew to take some questions. And Matthew, do you want to say anything around just how that was put together?
Sure.
How long it took, and how Blue Ventures is working in that region?
I mean, obviously, I'm sat currently in Bristol in the UK, and I'm very involved in the project, in the film project, having edited and now kind of running the campaign around the film. So I need to say a massive thank you to my colleagues in Madagascar, Paul, Garth, Avi, Emmeline, and Solentina, who made the film themselves. And it came about. It's come about after many years of working alongside communities in the southwest of Madagascar, getting to know them, working with them to try and identify conservation solutions. And I can go into a lot of detail, but I don't have time to about that. But of course, do reach out to Blue Ventures if you'd like to find out more. And in 2015, we met this woman called Madame Kokoly. And immediately kind of something about her was struck Garth and Paul, who were the filmmakers, the cameramen behind the film. She is in her mid-50s. She's still doing all these activities that she talks about in the film, but she's also reflecting on how things have changed. So for an organization like ours, she was perfect because she's this amazing woman, firstly. I mean, what a spirit and what a work ethic. But she also, through her words, reflects the reality for her community and for many in Madagascar and for even more across the world. So it took us a long time. We're not a production company, we're a conservation organization. So it took us longer than it should have done to pull together. We were supported by the Sundance Film Institute with some guidance. And yeah, it's done really well. So it's on the festival circuit at the moment, but it was always our intention to just put it out to the world for free and to try and spark conversation with it. So I would happily take any questions about the process or about her or anything. Yeah, it's great to see you all.
I mean, I'm just now going through the chat, and the first question that comes up from Tina Zo, which is, do the community understand what's causing the ocean to die, or I'm not gonna change her words, get empty?
Yeah, sure thing. So the film begins and ends with quite a clunky soundbite, and Madame Kokoly speaks in a particular way that even among her community is quite unusual. And she says, everything, once it's worth something, you won't see it anymore. Now, what she means by that is she has seen time and time again external market value be added onto something that she's traditionally relied on for food or for a small amount of income. So in her case, octopus. Not a huge amount of global trade for octopus a long time ago, but now there's a lot more of it. So a lot of fishers in Madagascar are fishing not only to feed themselves and their families, but also to fuel the restaurant trade across the world. So there's a lot of Chinese demand and a lot of European demand for the product. So that's one part of it that she sees most clearly than anyone else, and that's for her the biggest driver. I would say yes, the community knows what's happening. They see it with their own eyes. They see the impacts of climate change happening in front of their eyes. They see these forces outside of their control at play. And for a conservation organization, it's really important that we're listening to the people who live there, because they have the knowledge and often some of the solutions too.
Great. A couple of questions that have just come in around really what Blue Ventures is doing. Now, we know that many of you know the work of Blue Ventures that are online today. You have an octopus conservation farming project in just south of Andavadok. Yeah. Is this initiative helping villagers like her? And the second part to that question from that was from Robert Gier and from Ali Tam, is the seaweed growing project part of the Blue Ventures portfolio of activities?
Sure thing. Thanks, Robert and Ali. Yes, the octopus. It's not talked about in the film for reasons I won't get into. It's very complex. But yeah, there is temporary octopus closures is something that Blue Ventures has been working with communities to do, which is essentially closing a small area of the ocean for a short period of time to allow what is a very fast-growing species like octopus to replenish. And of course, that has a conservation win, as in there's more octopus at the end of the closure. But crucially, they're bigger and there's more of them, so their economic impact immediately after doing the conservation measure is there for the community. So it's less about conserving the octopus and more about working with the community to show them that done properly and done respectfully with their rights fully appreciated, that conservation can work. In Kokoly's case, there are octopus closures happening periodically, and sometimes they work really well, to be honest, and we see a boom, and sometimes they don't work so well, and there's lots of factors that will affect that. Compliance might be one of them. Compliance might be one. When the closure occurs, and the science is important there as well. So if you do the closure at the wrong time, then the biological impact's not as strong. So yeah, it's happening, seaweed, but it's complex. And the seaweed, the seaweed is a move to try and develop alternative livelihoods to reduce the pressure on fishing and the reliance on fishing. And COVID has proved why this is really important as well. It's about building resilience so that when shocks occur, whether they be climate shocks or COVID shocks, then there's alternatives there. So that's a really positive thing that is happening. Seaweed and sea cucumber aquaculture is happening across the southwest of Madagascar, and it's really cool to see the women taking the lead. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's women who are taking the initiative.
For a long time, we've seen the kind of distinct way that Blue Ventures tackles marine conservation by also working with communities. When on that point, actually, of obviously, it's great seeing how the women are taking the lead. A question that came in from Tiffany Coates is, so great to have so many women's voices being heard. We all applaud that. Where were the men?
Where were the men? So I when we were thinking about what questions might be asked, and this was one of them that came up, and I could give a woolly answer about equality and all the rest of it that would be valuable. But the reality is, in this case, the women were just far more interesting than the men were. And so, as a filmmaker, we're looking for good stories, and it just so happened that in this particular case, the women were doing more of the work. Octopus fishing is very much a woman's activity in a lot of cases, so it led us down that direction. But we could have featured male interviews. They just weren't as interesting, to be brutally honest. So that's why this film is an all-female. There is one man in the film. You might have spotted him working on the house, but yeah, they don't get very much to say this time around.
A quick question came in from Teresa Hain. What is the seaweed used for, and who buys it?
So it can be eaten and processed. And some of the work that we're doing with Blue Ventures now is what we call post-harvest work. So trying to maximize the value of a product, whether it be octopus or seaweed, so it goes just beyond kind of eating it as it comes. So it can be turned into soaps, it can be turned into shampoos and other kind of consumable projects. So there's an exchange going on with the community in Zanzibar. This was happening pre-COVID. It will hopefully kick off again afterwards, where we're taking a group of seaweed farmers from Madagascar over to Zanzibar to learn from a project that is further along in that process. And yes, I've seen the comment about carbon capture as well. We're doing some research at the moment on that very topic and seeing whether there's something there for the community too. Carbon credits, and the like.
That's fantastic. And a last question, because we're going to move on to the next part of today's event. Is what headway is being made, do you think, in Madagascar in terms of like policy and protection against obviously other countries coming in to take fish from the seas of Madagascar? That bigger picture of invasion, as it were, or incursion into Madagascar's territorial waters.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anyone on the call from Mahari. I'm not sure. Mahari is the small-scale fisher representation body in Madagascar that represents the interests of small-scale fishers. They are doing some fantastic work on this very thing, and campaigning and advocating for the rights of small-scale fishers, which might include such a thing as an exclusion zone around the coast, so trawling vessels from outside of Madagascar can't come in, and this is ongoing, and Blue Ventures will support this as much as we can. So it's an ongoing fight for sure.
I'm just going to look for any last questions. I mean, you're seeing the chat as well, Matthew. So inspiring, both as a project, a window in on a world that is fascinating, and on a person, Kokoly. What a inspirational character she is, and it's amazing that you've been able to capture her and all she does as an inspiration to others, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess one final thing on that point is we were able to take the film back to her in February and screen it, and we were thinking, like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get Kokoly to come on our little tour and take this film? You know, it's gone around the world and gone into some big film festivals. Wouldn't it be amazing if she could come and join us? And her exact words were, "You will never get me in a car, and I will never leave my village." So she's staying put. But yeah, she's happy with the film, and that she loves that the story being told.
Did she finish her house?
She did about 6 months later, and if you go on blog.blueventures.org, a couple of entries down, you'll see an update from her, and you can see the house, and she's now decorating it and making it better and all that. And if you'd like to find out more from me, then my email address is matt@blueventures.org, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
And did she get any payment for making the film? Did you support her?
Yeah, so there's obviously ethical issue around payment for documentaries. So she wasn't paid a stipend or anything like that directly, but profits from the film are going back into a new project. We're working with another organization on savings and loans, so a micro financing system. So she will be directly benefiting from some of the money from the film, but it wasn't paid per se for the project.
And there are a number of other questions popping up, which I think you could probably answer privately in the chat. Given that, whilst it's not on the recording, so apologies for people who are watching this after the presentation today, has the community been affected by COVID? How has Endeavour and that region been affected?
As far I've just seen a cat on one of the webcam pictures, and I've got distracted.
We wouldn't be having a web event without a cat. You know, that's a feature that every event has to have.
I think, thankfully, things haven't been as bad as they could have been. We have ramped up our community health work in Madagascar and have diverted some of our efforts to basic health, basic hygiene, and wearing masks and education. So the culture's definitely shifted. The impact has been economic, like probably most of us actually, and adapting to have shuttered a little bit. So there's less of this trade happening, which is obviously a problem for people that rely on it. Yeah, I guess that's
again. Well, I'd like to say thank you, Matthew, and obviously, I know you're representing a fantastic team, and we've just been following the development and great works of Blue Ventures since it was founded. So really, really fantastic to have you with us today.
No, my pleasure.
I'm now going to turn our attention to introduce Nina Finley. Nina, you can come off mute, and I believe that the screen is yours to share. And Nina's going to talk to us about, Nina works for an NGO called Health in Harmony, which provides healthcare, hunger relief and farming training in the east of Madagascar. And Nina's going to talk about, give us a presentation around forest protection and how this can stem the potential for future pandemics. I've probably butchered that, Nina, so please take over.
So as you heard, my name is Nina. I am American, but currently living in Norwich in the UK. And I do work part-time for Health in Harmony, just a few hours a week, but I'm predominantly a student. And I'm going to be talking to you today about a science research project that I worked on in Madagascar, and then linking it towards the end to Health in Harmony's work. So the title is Collaborative Survival: How Protecting Madagascar's Rainforests Might Prevent the Next Pandemic. So just a little background to start off. Most human diseases come from non-human animals. 60% of emerging infectious diseases since 1940 have been in this category. So some of these might surprise you, but everything from measles, which came from domestic cattle thousands of years ago, to influenza, which is hosted in wild waterfowl, ducks and geese, to HIV, which probably spilled over from a chimpanzee in the early 1900s, all the way up to COVID-19, which we're intimately familiar with today, which probably spilled over from bats or some other mammal. And we know that new diseases are emerging at an accelerating pace. We also know that pathogen diversity is increasing globally. So what that means is we have more viruses, bacteria, and parasites than ever before. But what scientists don't really know is why. And we have several hypotheses for what might be behind this increasing emergence of diseases. The one that I study is called the co-evolution effect. This is proposed by three scientists, Sarah Zodi, Tanya Schwartz, and Jamie Oakes. And we're going to get a little scientific here, so bear with me. The basic principle is that populations on islands evolve in different directions. So imagine if you have a big continent, a mainland, that's all connected, and a population of lemurs that live on it, or any wildlife. Because they can all interbreed with each other, they will evolve in just one direction. But now imagine if that landmass was flooded and divided up into dozens of different islands. Now the wildlife populations are isolated from each other, and they will each evolve in their own direction. And over time, they might even evolve their own species on each island. So this is relevant because islands don't just exist in the ocean, they also can exist on land. Specifically, when a rainforest is fragmented into small patches of trees, these also act as islands. But it doesn't stop there. We also have islands in the form of wildlife hosts, for example, mouse lemurs, and they act as islands for their parasites, such as lice, which can't easily move from lemur to lemur, so they consider these hosts as islands. And one level deeper, the parasites also act as islands for the tiny organisms that live within them, such as viruses. So the coevolution effect is a hypothesis. We don't know if it's true or not, but it predicts that this trio of a host, a parasite, and a pathogen, in this case a lemur, a louse, and a virus, might co-evolve or evolve at the same time and with each other, especially rapidly when isolated in a forest fragment. And this means that each forest fragment becomes what we call a co-evolutionary engine. Each island becomes sort of an accelerated petri dish for evolution of viruses. And over time, if you have many of these islands, you end up with a greater diversity of viruses across the landscape. So what does that have to do with human health? Well, disease spillovers are generally very rare. That might come as a surprise because we're also focused on COVID-19 right now, but in general, most animal viruses don't match up with a human body. So if there was an ill squirrel and it coughed on you, odds are you're not going to get sick because the virus is probably only adapted to squirrels and not to human beings. But occasionally the virus can make itself at home in a human, and that's what happened with COVID. So it makes sense that when viruses evolve independently in forest fragments, there's many more viruses out there in the world. So there's a higher chance that one of those viruses will be able to infect humans, and even worse, spread from human to human. And as we know, that is the prerequisite for a pandemic. So let's get to Madagascar. As I said, this is a hypothesis. It's not a proven theory, so we need to collect data to support or refute it. So I did this work in Rainforests National Park, which many of you are familiar with. It's located in south central eastern Madagascar. And here's a satellite image of the park. So the dark green color is the continuous rainforest, which we'll think of as the mainland. So all the evolution happening in that connected forest is generally headed in one direction. But if we zoom into the edge, anywhere around this mainland, we start to see that the edge is fraying into many fragments. Pointed a few here in the photo. So we'll consider each of these patches of isolated trees as an island because the lemurs and lice and viruses can't easily cross the sort of sea of bare land or cropland between the patches. So for those of you who may not have been to Rainforests, I want to walk you through this forest a little bit on the ground. This is what it looks like inside the continuous forest. It's very old trees, dark, misty, and very green. And this is what it looks like to work around the fragments. Each fragment is sort of a scruffy tuft of trees, and they're fragmented for different reasons. So on the left, you can see a fragment surrounded by irrigated rice, and on the right, you can see one that's along the edge of a ridge that was too steep to cultivate. So our study involved a large team. Here's just one sample of that team. We went camping for 8 days at a time, living around the forest fragments, and to give you a taste of camp, every meal was delicious rice or some variation on that. And we studied 3 organisms to make this trio, this coevolutionary engine. The first is our host organism, so that's the tsitsidi, or brown mouse lemur. It's one of the world's smallest primates, and it's nocturnal, so we had to do our work at night. The second organism we studied was the parasite, and for this, we looked at the owl, or lemur louse. This is an obligate parasite. That means it only lives on the body of the lemur. It cannot fly or jump like a mosquito or a flea, so it's pretty much trapped on the lemur, except in rare cases when it can jump from one to the other. So it's perfect for this study because it sort of acts like the lemur is an island. And the final organism in our trio is the pathogen. And we didn't know what we would find, but in this case, we were looking for any viruses that we could find by sequencing the RNA in lemur blood and in lice. So we would set traps in the afternoon. You can see 2 of my coworkers here, Menza and Zaka, baiting a trap with banana. We would give the mouse lemurs several hours of darkness to find the traps and get caught. They weren't harmed, they were just trapped. And then we would collect them after dark and measure them and sample them in our outdoor laboratory, which was really just a tarp. And we were collecting lice, blood, fur, and feces, as well as measurements. And as soon as we had our samples, we released the lemurs exactly where we'd found them. And a few months later, back in the lab, other scientists sequenced the RNA to discover the viruses there. So what were the results? Is the coevolution effect correct? We don't have enough data yet to give you the answer to that. We're working on it. But regardless of the mechanism, we do know that deforestation increases the risk of disease spillover from animals to humans. We just don't know exactly why. And I was really curious the whole time. I really enjoyed the research, but I was also left with this nagging question the whole time: what can we do about it? If we know deforestation puts everyone on Earth at risk, what is the solution? And one solution that I came across while working in Madagascar is this idea of planetary health. So this is where Health and Harmony comes in. They are a planetary health nonprofit that works in Indonesia, Madagascar, and Brazil, who I met while working in Madagascar. They work with 31 communities surrounding Manumbu Special Reserve, which is a critical piece of rainforest habitat in southeastern Madagascar, south of Ranamafon. And Health and Harmony's unique method is called radical listening. So to understand the drivers of deforestation and hunting and logging, Health and Harmony holds radical listening meetings, consensus community meetings, where they'll ask community members and local farmers and loggers, why do you log or why do you hunt, and what would you need in order to be able to stop? So in this way, Health and Harmony co-designs the solutions to illegal logging and hunting with community members who often know the solutions better than anyone else. The three solutions that community members co-designed with Health and Harmony in Manumbu were high quality, affordable healthcare, training in climate resilient agriculture for both rice and vegetables, and agroforestry. So the project in Madagascar is relatively new. It's only a few years old. So I don't have results from that to share, but I can share very encouraging results from the original program in Indonesian Borneo, where I've worked for several years. Since 2007, Health and Harmony has worked around Gunung Palung National Park in Borneo, which is shown here. And by co-designing solutions with community members, also involving healthcare and farming training, they were able to find a 90% decrease in illegal logging households over 10 years. At the same time, they had a 67% decrease in infant mortality and a decrease in all the other metrics of disease that they were measuring. And this is planetary health. It's a win-win solution that is good for both the ecosystem and the human. And through the course of their programs, they could also measure 21,000 hectares of secondary forest regrowing in and around Gunung Palung National Park. So I just want to zoom in right at the end here on one particular fragment. This is in Indonesian Borneo. On the right, you can see a photo of a corridor. It's called the Lubuk Baji corridor. And this corridor, these two forest fragments had been cut off from one another by rice farming and burning. And by working with community members to design a reforestation program where community members can pay for their healthcare with forest seedlings instead of cash, Health and Harmony reforested this corridor and essentially brought those two fragments back together and turned them from islands back into a mainland. And we know this corridor is working because this photo here of an orangutan is one of my favorites. It was taken on a camera trap, so it's sort of a selfie. And it shows that within 5 years of reforesting the corridor, primates like orangutans were already using it as a bridge to travel from one to the other, thus linking back the evolution from the two fragments into one continuous forest. So if the coevolution effect turns out to be correct or part of the answer, this sort of community-oriented reforestation and the linking together of fragments could be a critical tool for preventing disease spillover and the next pandemic. So in conclusion, I just wanted to come back to this term from my title, collaborative survival. It comes from the writer Anna Singh. And it tells us that human civilizations and our well-being depend on natural systems. When we support one another through radical listening and access to healthcare, we protect nature. And in return, when we protect nature, we're protecting our own health and one another. So that's my talk in a nutshell. I know it had to be fast, but hopefully if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you to so many people who have been part of this project along the way.
Thank you, Nina. That's fantastic. What great work that you're doing. I've been fortunate to spend time both in Kalimantan rainforests and with Dayak communities and obviously in rainforests in Madagascar. What were the big similarities that struck you when you were working in Madagascar to communities in Kalimantan?
There's so many similarities. I think that the biggest one that stood out to me was just how much radical listening really worked in both, and how communities have said such similar things about what sort of programs and solutions they would need to be able to live well with the rainforest. Healthcare is one that kind of stands out as not something that you would necessarily see. It's not something that's often talked about in terms of conservation. I hope that's changing, but there is such a strong link in both cases that healthcare is essential. It's something you can't really predict when an emergency is going to arise, a need for a C-section, and a surgery. So it's not something someone could particularly save for. And then often the only way to get that fast capital is through logging or burning or hunting or something in the forest. And that was, a really strong through line in both.
So a more technical question now from Nina, who spoke to us earlier about the impact of COVID in Madagascar currently. So how long does it usually take for a trio hosting system to co-evolve into something harmful for humans?
Great question. Let me share again. I had to cut out some of the more, okay. So this is the hypothesis. We don't have the data. So this is what we predict to happen, not what we've seen happening yet. It'll take many more years to get the answer. But this shows diversity on the y-axis and years since fragmentation on the x-axis. The larger animals involved, so the blue line, it would be the mouse lemur, the brown line would be the louse, and then some intracellular parasites like malaria in green and bacteria in blue. You can see they don't change very much even over 100 years. That's because they evolve and reproduce rather slowly. But viruses are this orange line. And in this prediction, we see that their diversity doubles in about 100 years. But it is increasing significantly even in like a 20-year time frame here. So we have no way of predicting when or if something harmful to humans will arise. But the more diversity you have, the more chance is that it will be harmful. So the more data we get, the more we can actually refine this line, but that's the prediction.
Yeah, I mean, how very apposite for the times we're in, given the Denmark is now on the watch list because of a COVID mutation in mink, and there is a big study right now, isn't there, which is the World Health Organization is finally getting underway into the origins of COVID in Wuhan. Interestingly, none of the animals in the market have tested. It was all of the testing swabs came from sewers. But you know, we live in this world where our increasing proximity to the wild is exposing us to never before experienced viruses and possibilities of a real issue for all our health. And I'm not seeing any other further questions on the chat right now. And I know that we were going to be finishing at 3:30 today. I just, on behalf of everyone in the Society, I want to thank you for that fantastic presentation and that amazing work. I mean, a round of applause, I'm sure, is coming out, and people can use emoji icons to do the same. But we'd love to, once we have physical meetings again, we'd love to welcome you back to give us an update on all this important work, and for all of our speakers, actually. So thank you. We now turn our, I don't know how this is going to go, but this is where I was going to suggest an open mic. So I guess if anyone wants to make any key points, any updates, I feel that Chris from Money for Madagascar, you should probably make your Christmas pitch for all the great works. Normally we'd have a table in the corner of the room for cards and calendars, and my son would be emptying my wallet as we speak, but there we go. And then what I'm going to try and do is a group screenshot towards the end of this, so don't run away, anyone. So has anyone got any points? Chris, do you want to do your pitch?
No, I don't think I should, because Irene is here, and Teresa, who is also doing the main all the gifts and things this year. So
apologies.
I can show you our wonderful calendar, which will be marketing this year, which is based on trees and livelihoods, really, it's called. Forests and livelihoods, and it's emphasizing the sort of link between human livelihoods and trees and wildlife. And it's got lots of images of trees contributed by people like Daniel, who is here, Teresa, who's here, myself, and various others who contributed trees, pictures of trees and so forth. So that's for sale for £8 on the Money for Madagascar website, which most of you will know where to find. If you go to moneyformadagascar.org, you'll find it. And I hope you enjoy the calendar, but also the cards and the alternative gifts as well. But I'm sure Irene or Teresa might like to say a little more about that. Thank you.
Teresa.
If you give me 30 seconds, I can get you 2 of the cards and show you.
Okay, so in the meantime, Irene, would you like to say a few words? Teresa.
Yeah, please do go onto our website and choose cards, calendars, and alternative gifts. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to have our usual craft stalls, or community events and things like that. So it's quite difficult times for community fundraising. So it'd be great if people can get behind our Christmas products. That would be really good. We also try to keep our website really fresh these days. So there's lots of information about what's going on, all the projects in Madagascar. So feel free to have a dig around while you're on the website and catch up with some of the latest news. We're here. We've kept going through the whole of COVID. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me in the office and find out any news about your favourite projects, don't hesitate to get in touch with us as well.
Great. I see Teresa's coming back. So Teresa, you've got a few seconds to give us a pitch, and then we're going to do
right.
Hold them up to the camera.
That's the first one.
Lovely.
It's of women pounding the rice and a lovely pair of chickens pecking away. Malagasy Christmas dinner in the offing, perhaps. And this is the other one, which is some gorgeous little boys in a school in Siramandidi, I think, where MFM has been involved in some reparations for the school.
Perfect.
They cost £4.50 for a pack of 10 with their envelopes, of course.
Website details are on the Anglo-Malagasy website, or you can go to, do you want to read out the website? Irene, what's the web address?
It's just moneyformadagascar.org, but we can pop it in the chat.
Perfect. If we pop that in the chat. Now, does anyone else, well, I'm going to do this screenshot thing now. I've gone through the screens, and a lot of you have now switched on your cameras, which is great. If you haven't got your camera on, there are 4 screens to do, so I'm doing screen 1, and you're all there. So I don't know what. Put on your best face. Hold on, let me just. There's. Thanks, Irene. That's in the chat.
Oh, hi, Rob.
It's now covering my screen. So right, I'm going to take the first screenshot. There's one. I'm moving on to the second screen. You're all there. That's fantastic. I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna go on to the third screen. There's so many of us, which is fantastic. Nearly everyone's got their cameras on, but that's okay. There we go. And I'm going on to the last screen now, where there aren't many cameras on, but that's fine. Your names are there, so you were here. There we go. So that's fantastic. Now, does anyone else have any points that they would like to make in this open mic experience? It's gone quiet.
I'm not sure you can see my screen, but I just wanted to show Daniel's book, just in case you are in need of... Oh, sorry, I was just talking about Daniel's book. If you haven't got it, make sure you do.
Daniel,
thank you.
Daniel, do you want to pop it in the chat, how to get hold of your book? This is a travel quiz book that Daniel's been working on very hard, given that he's not been able to travel. And so we can all delight our families either in person or via Zoom. So that means multiple copies. in Christmas competitions. So there it is. I'm not sure what else to say other than at this point, we very much hope that we will be having an Easter or March, April meeting in person. But it might be that we start to include more of these virtual meetings in general, because I had to go through 4 screens to screenshot you all, and that's just amazing. That's why we're here. And so we certainly will hope to bring you more meetings via Zoom and physical meetings as well. But these are trying times, and so obviously everyone stay safe. So once again, on behalf of the committee and the team here at the Anglo-Malagasy Society, but to be honest, it's all of you. We are the Malagasy Society. Thank you so much for joining. And again, we obviously wish the current ambassador in Madagascar many congratulations, maybe too early, for the impending birth of his 2nd child, I believe. Want to, and again, a happy birthday to Jamie Spencer. I don't know if you're on Jamie. I saw your name on the list, but if you are there, do you want to quickly say hello to everyone? Maybe not. He didn't join. Maybe he's having a birthday celebration somewhere. And lastly, to wish you, David Ashley, just the greatest of luck and all our support for your, we're rather jealous that you're flying to Madagascar in a month. But yeah, from all of us here at the Society, yeah, bon voyage, and look forward to seeing you in Tanna at some point.
Thanks very much, Chris. I look forward to it too.
Indeed. So look, thanks everyone. I guess I'll end the recording and end the meeting, and want to wish you all a wonderful Christmas, the safest or swiftest of lockdowns, and a safe and happy New Year and all of that.
Bye all.
And thank you again to all our speakers. Thank you.
Bye. Everyone. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Hello, Mama Drapiona. Amrasu.